issue. It was more of the multiple loans that we were seeing was causing the problem. Aside from that, I think we talked about creating a report. They would have to start reporting to the state every year so that the state could see, making sure that they get audited actually pretty heavily. The payday lending industry is audited probably more than any other industry, but making sure that any violations were reported to the state, making sure that the sanctions were going to be tough if we found anyone that was violating that at all. But keep in mind that what we did make sure of was already now in the payday lending industry, they are not charged late fees. They are not charged additional interest if they don't pay. There's nothing that happens to someone if they don't pay a loan. And that's what you need to understand.
I'm sorry, back up now. You're saying that that is the current condition, or what you think should be?
That's the current condition.
Okay.
There are no late fees. There are no additional interest fees, and there is no penalty should they not do that. For two reasons. One, it doesn't make sense for the payday lender to go to a magistrate and do all of that because they say it's not worth the expense, and they don't do that. What we are seeing, what you saw in the abuses that you heard were title lenders. They weren't payday lenders. What we were dealing with payday lending industry. So it wasn't a matter of their property being taken or anything like that. This was just a loan that they took out that they would have to turn around and pay back.
I don't think I'd invest in a business that didn't have any way to see that I got paid back.
It's a business that's out there. I mean, you may not invest in it, but it's a viable business where people go in, and if they suddenly need a new set of tires or they suddenly need something else, they go in there, they take out a $300 loan, they get their tires, they pay it back in 2 weeks. They cannot electronically draft out of their checking account. I mean, there is...
So, in other words, it's a business model that exists basically because the people taking out the loans don't know there are no penalties, and they're honest, and they are going to pay it back or get another loan and get themselves into trouble.
You know, what we found was that there was like a 90-10 rule. 90% of these loans are handled very responsibly, paid back on time, and have no issues. What payday lending reform was about was the 10%. How do we help these 10% that are falling into a situation where they are getting hurt? And so what we did was, that's when we pulled into the database. That's when we said we need to go to one loan at a time. Now the 90% are having to deal with the one loan at a time, but it was the only way we could take care of the 10, was to say let's do one loan at a time. You know, all of these things were put into place. I feel very good about the reform legislation that we came out with. I think that the members put a lot of good time into what would be right, what would protect the 10% without violating the 90% who finally met, I think, 6 or 7 weeks, standing room only. There were quite a few meetings, and we were scheduled to have one more meeting, and the chairman canceled that meeting. Meetings are handled at the discretion of the chairman, and he canceled the meeting, and we were not allowed to vote. I and the other members of that committee worked very hard on that legislation, and we're disappointed that we didn't have that vote. I thought it was a great piece of reform legislation, and I think that the people of South Carolina would have benefited, and I hope will benefit this year when it comes back.
You're talking about Harry Cato, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have to have things spelled out for me.
Okay, we've gone just about an hour. What have we missed? Anything you want to tell us?